warm welcome to our podcast, Meet the Expert in Sport Management. This is your podcast about topics in sport management and economics and in sport governance and politics. We will always have a look at ethical issues. This podcast is a cooperation between the Johannes Gutenberg University in Mainz and the German Olympic Academy DOA. Our topic today is UEFA Diversity and Inclusion among UEFA staff. And our guest is Sara Holmgren from UEFA. She studied a Master in Sport Administration and Technology. She started at UEFA in 2013 as an intern for National Associations Development. And then she moved up to the Education and Diversity program. There she developed different educational programs for UEFA and other national associations within European football. She then became guest liaison officer at the Euro 2016 and became 2 years ago Diversity and Inclusion Officer at UEFA. UEFA started to deeply look at diversity and inclusion with a research project in 2016. Sara is leading the internal action at UEFA on the topic of diversity and inclusion using analysis, research, knowledge and best practice examples to further develop UEFA and the workplace. Welcome Sara to our podcast. Sara, I'm very happy that you are here in our podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Okay, Sara, then let's start with my first question. As we just heard, you were part of the UEFA VIP team at the Euro. That is an extremely cool job, I would say. And today you are the Diversity and Inclusion Officer of UEFA. Wow, this is, I think, what many of our listeners also want to be in the future. So how did you get this great job?
The experience at the Euro was very cool, but I would say I think my job now is even cooler. No offense to tournaments, but it's a great job and it is an extremely hard but also rewarding situation. And I started off at UEFA within the education team, which is a part of the National Associations division. And I worked there for 5 years and learning a lot and getting extremely good possibilities of creating new programs, being part of creating concepts and traveling around and meeting different member associations and also learning through the education programs that we were developing and putting into place. And basically in that position, we actually started looking at creating a program for diversity and inclusion within our member associations. And we did that for a very short while. And after that, we actually said, let's redirect the focus here and let's look at actually the internal side of UEFA's diversity and inclusion. And I got that responsibility and did that on the side of the education gig for a bit. And then as the topic really grow in importance for the organization or for value for the organization, the position I now hold was created, and I started in October 2018 as the Diversity and Inclusion Officer, and have been going along and really enjoyed it since then.
Yeah, that's very cool. So can you give us an idea of what you are currently doing all day long? I mean, Diversity Inclusion Officer sounds very important, but what is the interesting insight you can give us from your current work?
Well, to play on the title, it's a very diverse job. I do anything from filling in Excel sheets about staff statistics and really looking into creating graphs of what's the split on sex aligning with the different positions that we have within the organization. What's the age difference between our staff? So anything from Excel into writing a strategy for a 5-year approach to how we will actually work on diversity and inclusion across the organization, across different perspectives and different actions for the next 5 years, and what do we want to achieve. I also work with engaging with our staff members as well and listening to what they might feel is working maybe not so well at UEFA, how we can maybe change this. I go to exchange with other organizations. I work a lot at the moment on, we want to do an equal salary audit. We've also worked extremely hard the last year on outlining a transparent presentation of all of our HR policies and procedures. So yeah, it can be literally anything. But most of it is really interesting, and yeah, it's a learning day at work every day as well.
Yeah, I can see already that diversity doesn't only mean gender issues, as we may have thought in the beginning. So what are the main criteria for you personally when you think about diversity? So what other areas than genders are attached to diversity?
I would say diversity comes with so many dimensions and constructs that it's also something that will always remain quite intangible, because when you speak about sex and gender identity, the biological sex is kind of male, female, intersex. Then if you talk about gender identity, we get into the non-binary, we get into the transgender, and we come into so many wider concepts as well. So just talking about gender has an even wider aspect to it. For me, it's when we work on diversity and inclusion internally at UEFA, we want to make sure that no one is treated differently based on any personal traits. The key kind of constructs that we mention are sex, sexual orientation, disability, religion, ethnicity, nationality, age. And if I missed one, I'm sorry, but go through them all the time. But what we also want to make sure is that we don't also limit our view to the things that we mention, but also always kind of finish that sentence with or any other personal trait, so that we kind of keep it open for us to also learn about other aspects that we may not consider, and maybe learn about things that we have not experienced or come across yet. So it's again, just like I mentioned earlier, it's a learning every day. And while we focus on more things, I think there are also things that we will learn to focus on in the future.
Yes, and we see how important it is for UEFA, and probably it should also be more and more important for all other sport federations to have such an officer like you, and you have a lot to do. Can you give us, for example, or a good example, where UEFA had a real advantage to have more thoughts about diversity? So, for example, I mean, what we all know or hear is that diversity brings value. So what value had UEFA already from having you or thinking deeper about diversity?
I think UEFA's always seen the value in diversity, I believe, because if you look at our team that are working towards our member association, they are a wide diversity of nationalities. It is similar for our teams that are going on venue when we have events. They have a diversity that brings understanding to the different locations, so they bring experience with working with the culture that you're going into. So I think there's always been that the value of diversity has been recognized. What we've seen as well, we did actually a project with our innovation team in the last year and a half, where we started a project internally called Innovation Through Diverse Thinking, where basically we knew that we had different teams that would like more input and feedback and ideas to their projects. So we said, well, hey, come to us and we will invite everyone from the staff to be able to join, and we can find the value in the different experiences that we have in the different divisions and units. We will get different cultural backgrounds, we will get different nationalities, different personal situations, and we bring them in, and let's have a 2-hour session where we try and get the value out of this and listen to different ideas, open our mind and really see this in maybe a different perspective. And that was, first of all, really interesting to see the engagement. And it did also come out with new ways of thinking, and it brought up perspectives that maybe the leads haven't thought of yet. So that is also just a way where you can also proactively kind of try and value and leverage that diversity, but always making sure it's done in an inclusive way, to make sure that that value really comes out as well.
And in general, we can see that there's an increase of communities coming together to fight for human rights or equal opportunities, and that also enters certainly the football pitch and the football field. How does that affect UEFA and its daily work?
Anything that happens on our pitches and on the side of the pitches and in our environment obviously affects the way that we do. But in my position, for example, when you see all of these aspects, such as the Black Lives Matter movement, if you see the rallies for LGBTQI plus rights, it's really something that brings the eyes to these topics, and it brings also the possibility for maybe more leverage to act on these topics internally. And it just shows that if we don't do this, there will be pressure from society to do it. So we should rather do it because we think it's right than because it's a pressure from society. So it really does just kind of strengthen the work that we can do. And yeah, it really is a little bit of an extra push from the outside as well.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think has been the biggest development of the area of diversity and inclusion for the employees of UEFA in the last year or last years, as that is your job?
It's an interesting question. I would hope that there's a more aligned awareness and understanding of what diversity and inclusion actually means, and how every individual is important for creating a culture that is inclusive and for valuing the diversity that we have. I do hope that there's a different approach to the way that we deal with each other, and the way that we review aspects, like if we're hiring a new person, how do we make sure that we're not letting any sort of bias come in the way to who we're choosing. I've been very happy to see just people come up to me and say, hey, if you need help, I'm really interested, and I actually used to do this and that in a previous job. So there's been just an increased openness on the topic as well. You hear people talk about the topic in the hallways every now and then. And I have people in the organization that just randomly sends me through an article that they think is nice. So I think the change from the topic was not something that was really mentioned very much in the organization before the position was created. It's gone to something that actually people are more proactive about, and it's become more of maybe a neutralized topic, if that is a correct word to use. And I would hope as well that people feel a bit like the inclusivity of the organization has increased as well. I can't say, but the research we have done has shown that seems to be the situation. But it still will take form a few more years before we can really say that we have made a proper change.
Mm-hmm. I have heard that you, as UEFA, have also developed a guideline for inclusive language. I mean, that is related to your department, but I have no idea, how does it work? Guidelines for inclusive language, are there words you can not say or mention in a particular context, or how can we handle that? Can you give us an idea about this interesting project?
Yes, so it's a topic that is also becoming more kind of a thing within different organizations. If you search inclusive language online, you will find big organizations that have their own outlines. But basically, what we've done is an internal guideline, so to support our staff and everyone that are working for UEFA, to just maybe nudge them in the things to consider. And we have our guiding principles that basically then come with a bit of a checklist of, and it's not saying you should say this or you shouldn't say that. It's more about the guiding principles of saying that, first of all, keep an open mind. We need to be aware that what we think is normal is based on our own upbringing and our own culture around us, or really what we've been put in front of us, what we've experienced. So to consider, well, this is normal to me, but what is it maybe not normal to others, and what is normal to others with different experiences. And also the fact that language is always evolving, and we need to reflect the change in society. And our second guideline is really that ask if you don't know. So we've actually created an inclusive language email for our staff where they can go and ask questions if they're not really sure. And what we've outlined as kind of our checklist to consider when you want to know if you're using appropriate language is to ask yourself 5 questions. One would be, will everyone feel represented? So if you're talking to a group, are you making sure that those with maybe invisible disabilities are feeling represented, or maybe those who identify as non-binary are feeling represented? The second question is, are you reinforcing stereotypes? So again, what might be normal to you might not be normal to everyone else. Are we referring to a wife or a husband when actually maybe partner is a more suitable word depending on the situations across the audience of the text or the speech? Will everyone understand? This is quite an interesting one, because if you're using jargon or abbreviations that you and maybe your team always use, but then all of a sudden you're put in a different situation and you talk the same way, but actually you're not reaching the audience because they don't understand the jargon or the abbreviations. Then the question is, is your language relevant? So is it relevant to say the female referee, if it's just a referee of the match? Then whether she's female or not is not really relevant. So do we actually need that in our language? And then the last one is saying, are you adding labels? So are we adding labels, assuming situations for someone, or adding labels that maybe we are not sure that they are there? We had one example when we spoke to one of our stakeholder groups, and they were saying that, well, sometimes, for example, a disabled person might not appreciate being described always as courageous or strong in every article where they're interviewed, but they might just want to be seen as the person that they are, and not being given these extra labels from the reflection of the person who've written the text. So that is the generic outline that we have now, and it's a really interesting project, and really looking forward to see how it develops as well, because we're still only in the beginning of it, and yeah, I can keep you updated on that one.
Yeah, that's very very kind, and I think this is a very interesting and important document also, yeah, to be used from all other organizations, as that is not only related to football, certainly. Okay, let me come to my last question before we do our small quiz at the end. It is referred to the future, my question, and what do you see as the key changes that are coming up in your area of diversity and inclusion?
I think there will be a lot of changes that we can't foresee. I mean, speaking in 2020, in the end of the year of COVID, I don't think we can ever really foresee what's going to happen and what's going to come at us. But what I'm quite excited about is to really see the way that intersectionality becomes a bigger topic on the agenda. I hear it a lot when you go to conferences specific on the topic. This is one of the words that are always mentioned in almost every presentation. But for that to become a more commonly used word as well, just in those who are not working every day on the topic, where intersectionality really refers to the fact that no one will ever just be female or male, and no one will ever just be Swedish or American, but I will always be very many different things. I will be a Swedish cis woman, and I am not religious. I have a university degree. I am not disabled. This means my situation is very different to another woman whose intersectionality is different to mine. And there is this tendency sometimes to say that this is what women need, or this is what women want. But there could be bigger differences between two women than there are between a man and a woman. So it's also intersectionality will also come into that, and really show that we need to think bigger than just these constructs, but try and start seeing also how there's intersects in between them, and that makes a big difference to how we should actually react to these situations as well.
Okay, Sara, thank you very much for this interview, and I think you gave us some thoughts about also potential research topics for some of our listeners, maybe writing their theses, or other researchers to think more in these topics. Okay, let's go to our 5 questions. The 5 questions are supposed to be answered right away from you, spontaneous. Are you ready to take the challenge?
Yeah, go.
Yeah. Okay, I start with an easy one. So the first question is, what was your greatest success you had at UEFA? Personal success.
That's a hard one to answer quickly. I think getting this position that I have now.
Yes, okay. Second question. What Swedish food do you like most and what do you hate most?
Swedish food. I love. My mom and dad cooks barbecued moose meats and new potatoes that they've grown on their backyard. That on our terrace. It's just so good. And I cannot stand fermented Baltic herring, which I know is a very commonly Swedish joke about that. I just can't take it. Ugh.
Good, good. I'm happy that you don't say this is your best food you ever had. And
one of my best friends, it's her favorite dish, and I can't
oh
just
my God,
can't
my
do
God.
it. But.
Okay, third question. You are from Forsvik, 1 hour flight north of Stockholm, with 25 people living in your town. Perfect. You have 24 players and 1 referee to play football. But no, to take it serious, do you play football yourself?
I used to. I started playing, I think, when I was 11 or 12. But I had to stop when I was 19 because of a knee injury. But I've had played for fun here back in Switzerland. And UEFA has a women's team that I played with quite a bit. But then some other medical things have come up, so I haven't played in the last year and a half or so. But I'm very excited to get back at some point, and just waiting for this medical thing to calm down a little bit so I can go back on the pitch because I absolutely love it. I'm such a competitive person as well. It's like, yeah, ridiculous.
But still, with your knee injury, my next question is, what personal sportive achievement is still in your bucket list?
Oh, I'm gonna go really big here, and I'm probably gonna regret that I say it, but one day I would like to run a marathon. I've run a half marathon, but never a full marathon.
Okay. And my last question. If we all can travel again, what will be the trip you look most forward to?
Probably going to Mexico with my boyfriend because we were gonna go there for New Year's, but that has now been cancelled.
And do you intend to watch a football match there in Mexico?
Probably. We tend to, if there are matches on, we try and go where we travel.
Good. Thank you very much for this interview and for the frank answer to all the questions. I think this is a very important and interesting topic. Thanks, Sara, and yeah, all the best for your future.
Thank you, Holger. I really appreciated being part of it.